At Thanksgiving, my Aunt Marina blocked me at the front door and told me I was not allowed inside. She stood there with her arms spread out like she was guarding a vault, saying I would ruin the family's holiday. I barely had time to ask what she meant before a police car rolled up behind me. My family rushed outside, whispering that the police were finally here for me, like I was a criminal. But the officer walked straight past them and handed me a box. He said, "This belongs to you. Your family has been keeping it from you for years." Everyone went silent. My aunt looked like she had seen a ghost. My father looked like he wanted the ground to swallow him. When I opened that box, I finally understood why my whole family spent my entire life treating me like an outsider. And what I did with what I found inside destroyed Thanksgiving in a way none of them will ever forget. Thanksgiving at the Quinn house always looked perfect from the outside. The long driveway lined with pumpkins, the smell of roasted turkey spilling out of the windows, the sound of relatives laughing before you even reached the porch. But for me, Thanksgiving was never warm. It was a yearly reminder that I was the one person in the family who never truly belonged. This year, I tried to stay hopeful. It had been nearly 2 years since I last saw them. I thought maybe time had softened things, but the second I stepped onto the porch, Aunt Marina shoved the door shut and said, "Turn around. You are not coming in." She didn't even try to hide her disgust. My cousin stood behind her, smirking like this was entertainment. My mother whispered something behind her hand, and my father, the great Dr. Warren Quinn, refused to look at me at all. I took a step back, confused and embarrassed, when the police car pulled into the driveway. Everyone pushed past me to stand closer to the officer. They acted scared. They acted guilty. They acted like whatever was about to happen had nothing to do with them. The officer held a box out toward me and said, "This was found in a storage unit registered under your father's name. The court ordered that it be released to you immediately." My aunt snapped, "She doesn't need that. Give it to me." The officer didn't even look at her. "It is addressed to Laura Quinn only." My stomach dropped. My family suddenly looked terrified. For the first time in my life, they weren't mocking me or ignoring me. They were afraid of what I might find. If you're watching this, make sure to subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. I carried the box inside the house, even though Aunt Marina tried to grab my arm and stop me. The officer stayed on the porch, watching her like he already knew she would try something. I stepped into the living room, and the noise around me faded. Every adult in the room had the same expression: fear mixed with guilt, not confusion, not surprise, fear. I sat on the couch and opened the box. Inside were old VHS tapes, manila folders, and a thick binder with a red label across the front. Project Q13. My name was typed under it. Not handwritten typed, as if it were official. My hands shook when I lifted the first folder. It was full of behavior charts from my childhood, emotional responses recorded in neat handwriting, dates, times, reactions, every meltdown I ever had, every punishment I received, every time a cousin tricked me or embarrassed me, all of it documented like I was part of a lab study. I stared at my father. "What is this?" His face turned gray. He opened his mouth, but Aunt Marina stepped in front of him. "You don't need to look at that." It was nothing, just old notes. He was a therapist. He wrote things down. I pulled out a second folder before she could stop me. It held evaluation sheets labeled with the names of my cousins, Felicity, Joel, even my mother. They had sections titled Assigned Behavior, Target Reaction, and Outcome. My heart dropped. I read one page aloud. Assigned Behavior. Exclude Laura from group activities to evaluate emotional resilience. Expected outcome: withdrawal or anger. My cousins went pale. I read another. Assigned behavior: mock her appearance during holidays to test self-esteem threshold. My mother whispered, "Lara, please put that away." I looked up. "You were testing me like I was a pet." My grandmother began to cry. Uncle Joel looked sick. The whole room was spinning, but there was more. At the bottom of the box was a DVD labeled Subject 13, Age 5 Interview. Aunt Marina shouted, "Turn that off. Do not watch that. It was private family material." Her panic told me everything. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't old therapy junk. My entire childhood had been a controlled experiment, and every person in the room had been a participant. I held the DVD in my hand, and the room froze. No one breathed. No one moved. My father finally stood up, shaking his head like he could erase the past by denying it. "Lara, this is not something you should watch. It was clinical. You won't understand the context." He reached toward the DVD, but I pulled back. "I was 5. You don't get to tell me how to understand it." My aunt stepped in front of him again, acting like his personal guard. "Stop stirring things up. You always exaggerate. That DVD was part of a harmless study. You are making this dramatic for attention." I walked past both of them and put the DVD into the living room player. My hands were steady for the first time since arriving. The screen flickered and the footage appeared. Grainy, old. My 5-year-old self sat on a little plastic chair in my father's office. I wore a blue dress and clutched a stuffed rabbit. My eyes were red from crying. My father's voice from behind the camera asked, "Why do you think the other kids don't want to play with you?" I watched my younger self hesitate, then answer in a small voice, "Maybe because I'm not good enough." My uncle dropped into a chair like someone had punched him. The video continued. My father asked, "Do you think crying will change anything?" My younger self shook her head and stared at the floor. He wrote something on a clipboard and told me to stand in the corner for calibration. Calibration. Like I was a device. My mother covered her mouth. My aunt lunged for the remote, but Grandma Iris slammed her cane on the table. "Sit down, Marina. She will watch all of it." The footage shifted to another clip. My cousins were around 8 years old, standing in a circle while my father coached them. He told them to introduce mild social rejection and record my reaction on their chart sheets. He used those exact words. It was all there. Video proof that every cruel moment of my childhood wasn't random. It wasn't accidental. It was assigned. My father shouted, "Turn it off. This is not the time." I turned to him. "This was my life. When exactly is the time?" He had no answer. His perfect posture collapsed. The room no longer looked like a Thanksgiving gathering. It looked like a crime scene, with every person realizing they were either a victim or an accomplice, and none of them knew what I was planning to do. Point us on next. The DVD clicked off, and the silence that followed felt heavy enough to crush the room. No one dared to look at me, not even the cousins who used to treat me like their personal toy. My father rubbed his temples like he was the victim of a mild inconvenience, not the architect of a childhood full of psychological pain. Aunt Marina paced behind the couch, muttering to herself, "This was never supposed to get out. We handled this. We handled all of it." I stood up so fast the chair legs scraped across the floor. "Handled what? Your experiment? Your reports on me? Your assignments for everyone to treat me like I was beneath them?" My father snapped. "It was controlled exposure. It made you resilient." I laughed. A harsh, broken laugh I didn't recognize coming from my own throat. "You tortured a child and called it research." That's when the police officer stepped inside. Nobody heard him come in. He held a thick envelope. "I need to inform you," he said, looking directly at my father, "that this box was not the only one found." My aunt's face drained of color. "No, no, no." He handed me the envelope. "This one was locked inside a safe. Court orders say this must go to Lara Quinn immediately. You have full rights," my mother whispered. "Please don't open that." She sounded terrified, not protective. I opened it anyway. Inside was a full research summary labeled Project Q13 Final Phase. The date was recent, only 3 months old. I flipped through the pages and felt my stomach twist. The experiment was never ended. It was restarted. My father had written Subject 13, Demonstrates long-term obedience patterns. Prototype nearing completion. Thanksgiving will serve as final trigger event. I read it loudly. My voice shook with rage. My father lunged toward me. "Give me that now," I stepped back. "You were trying to finish the experiment on me today." He shouted, "You were supposed to react with compliance or emotional collapse. You were never meant to fight." The entire room gasped. Aunt Marina screamed at him. "I told you. She was too old for this. You should have stopped years ago." He snapped back at her. "You all agreed. Every one of you signed the consent." The officer stepped forward. "Consent for psychological studies involving children cannot be applied retroactively to an adult. And this one appears criminal." My father tried to argue, but I kept reading. There were transcripts of my therapy sessions he had secretly pulled, ratings of my social media posts, charts predicting my romantic relationships, even a plan for what they called controlled reintegration, meaning how they planned to treat me after today, depending on whether I cried, left quietly, or confronted them. My hands shook so hard I dropped the papers. My grandmother picked them up and read silently. Then she slapped her son across the face. The crack echoed across the living room. "You turned your child into a lab rat. Your own daughter." My father held his cheek, but said nothing. He looked smaller than I had ever seen him. A cousin whispered, "We didn't know it got that bad. We only did what our parents told us." "You knew enough," I said. "You all did." My mother stepped forward with tears in her eyes. "We did not mean to hurt you. Your father told us it was necessary. He said you needed structure." I stared at her. I needed a family. The room broke then. My aunt collapsed onto the couch crying. My mother tried to grab my hand, and I pulled away. My father sank into a chair like a man waiting for a sentence. The officer cleared his throat. "Lara, you have the right to press charges. Based on what we found, the court will support you." Every eye in the room turned to me, waiting to see what I would do. And for the first time in my life, they were the ones afraid of my next move. I stood in the center of the living room with every pair of eyes locked on me. For the first time in my life, my family wasn't laughing, mocking, or ignoring me. They were terrified. Terrified of what I would say. Terrified of what I would do. Terrified because the script they spent decades writing had finally slipped out of their control. "Lara," my father whispered, "you don't understand what you're doing. If you press charges, your entire family will crumble." My voice was calm. "Maybe it should." Aunt Marina burst into tears. "Everything your father did was for science, for research, for progress. You benefited from it more than you think." I stared at her. "I didn't benefit from anything. I survived, in spite of all of you." The police officer placed a hand on his belt. "Miss Quinn, your choice." I looked around the room, at the cousins who practiced rejecting me like it was homework, at the mother who rated my emotions on charts instead of comforting me, at the aunt who blocked me at the door because she wanted to complete the finale of an experiment I never consented to, and at the father who built his entire career on my pain. "This ends today," I said. My father opened his mouth to argue, but the officer cut him off. "Dr. Quinn, I advise you to stay silent." Grandma Iris stood beside me. She grabbed my arm not to stop me, but to steady me. Her voice was trembling but fierce. "Do what they never had the courage to do. Tell the truth." I nodded and looked at the officer. "I want to file charges, all of them, every single person who participated." Gasps filled the room. My mother started sobbing openly. My cousins hid behind each other. My aunt fell to her knees. My father clenched his jaw. "Lara, think rationally. You are not strong enough to handle what comes next." It was almost funny. After everything, he still believed he could tell me who I was. "I am stronger than you ever allowed me to believe," I said, "because you trained me to survive pain. You just didn't expect me to use that strength against you." The officer nodded. "Understood. I'll contact the station." He stepped outside to call for backup. The moment the door shut, my mother rushed toward me. "Lara, Please. I didn't know how deep it went. Your father said it was harmless conditioning. He said you would thank us someday. You watched a 5-year-old sobbing on tape and did nothing, I said. You don't get to beg now. My mother dropped her head. My aunt tried next. I only did what he told us to. He said we were shaping your future. You were shaping my trauma, I answered. Then Felicity spoke. We didn't understand. We were just kids. You understood enough to enjoy it, I said. Silence filled the room again. My father stood up slowly, like a man preparing to deliver one last speech. Laura, you were always the most sensitive. The experiment was designed to strengthen that weakness. Your reactions made the data valuable. I felt disgust churn in my chest. I wasn't weak. I was a child, and you turned me into a lab report. He stepped closer. If you wanted a normal life, you should have learned to follow instructions. I took a step toward him. If you wanted to stay out of prison, you should have chosen a different career. His face twisted with rage. For the first time, he wasn't a respected doctor or a polished leader. He was a man who had lost control of the narrative he created, a man whose power had finally cracked. Blue and red lights flashed outside the windows. Backup had arrived. 2 more officers came inside. We need to take statements, one said. The room erupted into chaos. My aunt tried to hide documents under couch cushions. My cousins tried to leave out the back door. My mother pleaded for mercy. My father kept repeating, it was research, it was scientific, it was controlled. No one listened to them anymore. While officers questioned them, Grandma Iris pulled me aside. There's something else, she whispered. She reached into her purse and handed me a second envelope. Your father kept a backup file. He never thought I would take it. Inside was a copy of Project Q14, the one planning to use my cousin's newborn daughter as the next subject. I froze. He was going to do it again. Grandma nodded. I couldn't let another child grow up the way you did. I hugged her, the first real hug I had received from a family member in years. When the officers finished, my father was escorted out first. His head hung low. His perfect Thanksgiving was destroyed. His perfect image shattered. His control over me gone forever. As he passed me, he looked up and said, You ended my life, Laura. I stared back. You ended mine when I was 5. I'm just returning the truth. He was taken outside. The house felt different now. Not safe, but honest. I grabbed my coat and walked to the door. Before stepping out, I turned back to the family that ruined me. You wanted to observe my reaction one last time, I said. So here it is. I opened the door. I'm done with all of you. Cold air hit my face as I stepped into the driveway. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I didn't look back. For the first time in my life, I wasn't leaving as a rejected child. I was leaving as the only honest person in a family full of liars. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you're watching from.